What's up, everybody? I came across the phrase that great engineers don't collect, they decode. And that really stuck with me. I keep that in mind whenever I'm thinking about my outboard gear, plugins, microphones, or anything else, that I shouldn't be running around just trying to collect things because I'm told that I should have these, but rather I should spend most of my time and energy decoding what I do have so that it becomes very predictable for me. And when I reach for things, I can reach for them with confidence and understand what I'm supposed to get out of them. If you've been following us now for roughly our first year of existence, you know that this channel is no stranger to running into some audio problems when I am turning towards the camera and speaking.
You can say that again.
Recently, we have begun looking at some different microphone choices in order to make sure that we are providing the best quality audio we can, especially when I'm turning and doing all my wild hand motions. And as a universe kind of put forth, Darren from Fine Microphones happened to reach out, found our channel, much thanks to you and all of your support, and asked if I'd be interested in shooting out the Fine K688 against the SM7B that I use. Now, while I don't really consider this channel to be a channel that shoots out gear or says something is better than the other, what I actually thought about was this seems like a great opportunity for me to discuss what I consider to be my 9-point checklist in terms of evaluating microphones, whether I am shooting out various microphones for a vocalist or if I am considering microphone choices for a recording session. And I take those findings and I jot them in a journal. This was something for me that kind of hit me when I went to my very first AES convention. Yeah, I was probably a month, maybe 2 months into my audio engineering journey, and I stumbled over to the Audio Technica booth where they basically had iPads and headphones, and they would play you maybe 15 to 20 different sound sources being recorded. They were recorded with the Audio Technica, it might have been the 2020 or the 4040, so definitely not one of the super expensive mics, and then like a U87, maybe a 67, and as I was going through each particular listening example, a lot of times I found that I was actually preferring the Audio Technica microphone, but second, it hit me, I really couldn't tell these apart.
That's a problem.
When it comes to microphones, I was heavily inspired by Bruce Swedien's book, Recording Method, where the first thing that he discusses is the importance of his microphone choices and just how seriously he takes his microphone collection in terms of really knowing what each microphone is supposed to do. He is adamant about, respect for the microphones in terms of their care, but also making sure that you go to great lengths to pair the right microphone with the right source. Another book, which I love, called Mixing with Your Mind by Michael Paul Stavrou, the first thing that he really discusses is getting to know microphones and his microphone rating system. Part of what I do, I did learn and took from his book, where he discusses a hardness factor, where he will take microphones and count to 10 in them, and then give what he hears a hardness rating from 1 to 10 in terms of, maybe how much bite or punch the microphone has. So that got me thinking that I should probably have a microphone journal. So I'm very excited today to walk you through the 9 plus 1 bonus measuring stick that I use to have my microphone evaluation system. I would highly recommend listening on a good pair of headphones or a good pair of studio monitors. And I would also encourage you to either have a notebook, some pen and paper, or your notes app open so that you could begin your own journal. And the exercises, I am not going to tell you while we're listening which is the Shure and which is the Fine. That way you can develop your own taste sensibilities and see without any kind of bias which microphone under different listening circumstances you might prefer. So the two microphones that we are going to be shooting out against each other today are the Shure SM7B and the Fine K688, which just by appearance you could see is kind of going for a similar design build. And when we're looking at microphones, the majority of this video and what we're talking about with the journal is focused on listening, but I wouldn't really be doing my job if I also didn't mention that, in my opinion, there's really kind of two personalities to a microphone. The first is the tonal characteristics, essentially what we hear when the microphone is capturing the sound source. But the second is essentially its mechanical personality. And the mechanical personality, in my opinion, kind of revolves around handling noise, mechanical coupling, which would be like transmission through like floors or stands, mechanical resonance, which is the mic body vibrating. So if you kind of like tap around the build of a microphone, sometimes you can hear like, a lot more noise, a lot more resonance. And the last thing would be essentially like the the internal capsule picking up vibrations. So we have a tonal personality to a microphone, but then also a mechanical personality. And sometimes, depending on the situation we're going to be in, we do have to take into account the mechanical personality. Now, as far as the fine goes tonally, we're going to move through this entire video and let you kind of hear it against the SM7 and develop your own taste sensibilities through our 9-point checklist. From a mechanical standpoint, I would say that the fine does have a greater amount of mechanical resonance than the 7B does. So if you're using this microphone and you have a fidgety singer or somebody that likes to kind of tap on the floor or using it on a surface that might not be decoupled, you might get a little bit more noise or thumping in the signal. But other than that, the microphone is a very practical mic in terms of its modern build. You have a volume knob on the back and the ability to use it through a USB access. If you run them both simultaneously, which actually is pretty cool, you can do the USB and the XLR. The mute and the volume will work with the USB, where it doesn't actually work with the XLR connection. For our experiment today, we used a traditional XLR because we're focused more on recording studio usage as opposed to, say, podcast or things like that. Now, if you're not familiar with the SM7B, I should say, it's essentially like broadcast and recording legacy. The parent model of the 7B that we're using was the Shure SM7, and that was introduced in the early 70s, and it was basically to serve as like a high-end broadcast mic. It really became a go-to for top engineers and studios because it also did have a full range response, and the mechanical aspect, its very rugged build, its ability to handle very powerful vocals, most famously Bruce Swedien's choice to use that on the Thriller record. Now, just to touch on our experiment, both mics were set up at the same height, same distance from the performer. The only thing we had to account for was the capsule placement is different in the fine than the Shure 7B. It's a little bit closer, so the performer had to move back basically another thumb length just to kind of account for that, so that we were the exact same distance from the mics. We went right into a Scarlett box, so just something very neutral, something that everybody kind of has, so no fancy preamps, and then went right into GarageBand. So again, not really using any of my typical equipment and just trying to get the most bare bones and focus feature on the microphone. I have all of our tests broken up into Pro Tools folders. This will probably be one of the last times that you see this screen clearly, because then we'll begin blurring everything out so that you can do your test. We're going to keep things kind of short so that you can still have a memory of the example prior when evaluating it against. What I do feel very confident in saying before we start this test is if your experiences is anything like mine when I first started doing this, by the end of this test, you will clearly hear differences between two microphones. Now, you might not know which is which off the bat, which is fine, but when those answers are revealed, you will then be able to attach in your brain a sonic signature to each microphone. It's why I started a journal, and it's why I do this with as many mics as I can, because it really helps you build up a mental Rolodex in your head of microphones and what they sound like in varying applications. So our first listening example is going to use two types of spoken word. We're going to take the same phrase and we're going to say it in a very conversational tone, which would be kind of very smooth. And then we're going to say that same phrase with emotion. We will do Dom, the male vocalist, first, and then we will switch to Liz. All the examples are level matched. I didn't level match the male performances to the female performances. They might be slightly off, but all the male performances are perfectly level matched to themselves, and all the female performances are all perfectly level matched to themselves. We will go first with the normal spoken word and then with the inflection.
Went to the coffee shop and got a $8 cup of coffee. And I went to the coffee shop and got me a $8 coffee. And then I went to the coffee shop to get a $8 cup of coffee? And then I went to the coffee shop and got a $8 cup of coffee?
I didn't realize how hard I fell. I didn't realize how hard I fell. I didn't realize how hard I fell. I didn't realize how hard I fell.
Our next exercise is going to be soft singing or whisper vocals. Now, the importance of adding in a soft singing or a whisper vocal is that when you're doing soft singing or whispering, the vocal folds don't completely close. They stay open and air kind of turbulently moves through it. When that happens, it creates non-musical harmonic content, essentially almost noise, above the 8K range. However, that noise through quality microphones or, great preamps can help enhance the presence or what feels like the intelligibility of the vocal. But on a microphone that is not up to that challenge, that area can then begin to feel very brittle. So what we're looking for this exercise to reveal microphone-wise is how well each microphone handles a lower SPL, meaning does it have a noise floor that's going to bring up? We're going to get a lot of hiss. Does it maintain the detail and clarity? And also how it does handle that harmonic content. Okay, our third exercise is really our core exercise. It's going to be a medium pressure vocal. Think something like a verse or, a mild-mannered indie chorus. And here, we're going to be able to hear the mid-range intelligibility of the microphone, also how it handles a little bit more pressure in terms of sibilance and transients. I consider this exercise the truth exercise. It really helps me understand how the microphone is going to seat a vocal in the mix. Does it feel very kind of harsh and brittle to me, or does it feel very present and not overly extended or hyped in any particular area?
They think your skin is made of stone. They think your skin is made of stone.
When daybreak comes, he stands and waits. When daybreak comes, he stands and waits.
The next exercise we move on to is belting. Now, belting produces a different type of harmonic content than the airy singing. When a singer is belting, their vocal folds are closed essentially. I'm not a professional singer, but from what I understand, they are essentially kind of pressed together, not like tension pressed, but they're essentially shut. And above the fundamental, we begin to get second and third harmonics, which make the vocal feel a little bit more rich. So what we're expecting the microphone to reveal in a belting exercise is a high SPL level. Can it handle that? How it handles transients at that level. Can it keep the detail? Or does the microphone begin to kind of choke and close out? And also, how does it handle the harmonic content? Does it start to create almost like a glare where things begin to be brittle and very fatiguing? Or does that harmonic frequency area begin to sound very rich and enhanced?
When will they learn? When will they learn?
Come away with me, my dear. Come away with me, my dear.
Okay, next we have one of my favorites, and this is the genre identity, where we're going to have the singer kind of deliver a few lines that are, more specific to the genre that we're recording in. Or if you're doing this for your own particular mic journal and it's not for an artist during a recording session, you can do what I did in this listening example, which is have the artist deliver two different distinct kind of genre deliveries. One which is more of an R&B, hip hop, faster delivery, and then one that's more of a rock, kind of closed off and driving delivery. And what we're looking for here is how these microphones track inside a genre. We're looking to kind of extract as much detail as we can for our journals so that we know if we only have, a couple mics to grab for a session, what might be great choices. And understanding how certain mics might perform based off particular genres is very important because, as you probably know, if you've done a lot of reading or watch a lot of YouTube, certain microphones do have reputations of being particular favorites inside certain genres.
There's this girl who treats me like we're merely strangers. There's a girl who treats me like we're merely strangers.
What you gonna do, what you gonna do, what you gonna do? What you gonna do, what you gonna do, what you gonna do?
Yes, I'm a simple man and you're a tricky, tricky woman. Yes, I'm a simple man and you're a tricky, tricky woman.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Now let's move on to harmony stacking. Again, this might be one that if you're working with an artist and you're trying to shoot out 4 or 5 different microphones, unless harmonies are a massive part of the production, this would be something that I would do for my own journaling when I'm just shooting out microphones to gain greater sense of clarity. Because for anybody that's done recording sessions and either time's a factor or you have, limited resources, we actually want to know, is a microphone a better kind of one and done mic choice, meaning we put it up on a source like a vocal, we record the vocal, and that's it? Or can the microphone actually stack more harmonies, double tracks on it without becoming muddy? Can it maintain clarity and openness while stacking its own, say, sonic fingerprint over multiple tracks?
Let me ask you something when you have the chance. Let me ask you something when you have the chance.
Let me ask you something when you have the chance. Let me ask you something when you have a chance.
Now we're on to the one that's probably the most self-explanatory, and that is our plosives test. So with plosives, we're really looking at how the microphone handles proximity and also dynamics. We're looking for the microphone to essentially reveal how it handles the low end and also plosive rejection.
Powerful people prefer perfect performances. Powerful people prefer perfect performances.
Powerful people prefer perfect performances. Powerful people prefer perfect performances.
And our last exercise is going to be how the microphones handle processing. What we really want to know is when we begin to compress the microphone and build in extra harmonics, does the microphone begin to collapse under that kind of pressure, or does it begin to shine?
They think your skin is made of stone. They think your skin is made of stone.
When daybreak comes, he stands and waits. When daybreak comes, he stands and waits.
Now, while we didn't do it here, I would encourage you to do the exercise that was in the Mixing with Your Mind book and do a quick count to 10 and then give the microphone a hardness rating. That way, in your journal, you now have 9 solid points plus a hardness rating for each microphone that you encounter. So whether you are working at a studio with an expensive and expansive mic locker, you have now some information and some insight into some of those mics. Or if you're deciding as you're building up your home studio which microphones might be the right fit fit, because we want to know our sound source, how those microphones respond in space, and then also their level of predictability. Now, for the bonus one, what I would say is very important, and at the end of the recording demonstrations, I asked both vocalists what their thoughts were on the microphone. And if we're talking about coaching great performances and trying to get the best out of any kind of vocal, the most important thing is that the singer feels confident and comfortable with the tools that they are using. So while we might prefer a particular microphone on a vocal, a singer might prefer a different one. And that might elicit, at the end of the day, the performance that we need.
I don't really know. I like both of them. I will say that the Fine definitely had, I feel like it had a little bit more built-in compression, because I feel like when I got really low, it picked up on that really well. When I got really loud, it didn't generally peak as much. I like that the 7B, you can do a little bit more dynamically then. Like, I feel like you kind of have to like work for it, which me as a singer, I kind of prefer that energy.
So I really liked both mics. I felt like with the 7B, there was more warmth in my sound, which I tend to lack as a higher female singer. But from a recording standpoint, the Fine was a lot easier to hear. It just felt really crisp and definitely not what I was expecting from it.
Okay, my friends. So as always, I hope you found this video useful. A massive thank you to Fine, the K688. Really excited, was very surprised in regards to how well it performed, and also that both vocalists walked away really excited about it. I often have conversations with engineers, and one of the things that I discuss is, working inside today's, modern recording world. And something that is important is to be able to have a very fast go bag where you can have a quick interface, a computer, and perhaps a microphone or two that you can fit inside a book bag and meet up with artists for either pre-production or be able to, grab a demo really fast on the fly. And having microphones that you can rely on are very important. And the K688 really impressed me in that capacity. It has a lot of modern functionality. It's really a fantastic microphone, especially when you're talking about a microphone that's under $100. And what's more important, though, is that you now know what this microphone sounds like, because we can compare it to any microphone on the planet. I don't really think that matters as much as understanding what this microphone is capable of doing. And whether you're podcasting, whether you're doing voiceover work, or whether you're using it to record vocals on a record, it's really important to understand and have confidence that when you set that microphone up, you know what you should expect from it, and you know how it's going to perform in that circumstance when adding compression, equalization, different vocal dynamic ranges. So as always, I hope you found this useful. I hope you found the 9-point checklist useful, and I do really hope you incorporate it into your workflow moving forward. Okay, my friends, until next time.